Howdy, good afternoon. I'm here with Phil Mills Jr., who is a Western writer par excellence. In fact, he's on the board of Western Writers of America, the vice president. He comes to us from Missouri by way of Georgia and now living in Texas, but he writes about Wyoming, where the wind is always blowing, and if it ever stopped, everybody would fall over.
That's exactly right.
I read his first book, which won a Spur Award, and that, God, what an exciting book! Where a good wind blows. I think the first chapter, there was a stagecoach robbery from which the heroine escapes. And then there's a prairie fire, and she escapes that because she jumps into a stream and there's a flash flood. And she heads downstream and gets washed up on the bank. And I think she avoids a buffalo stampede. But anyway, it is a quite an exciting novel.
Well, thank you. There's something always going on, that's for sure.
Oh, no question. And having said all that, I was going to ask you, what is your genre? What sort of writing do you do?
Well, I do two different things. I try to write fiction, Western fiction, as you say, in Wyoming, although in some projects that I'm currently working on, I'm expanding that into Montana and some other areas as well. I've written 3 children's books as well that are set in Oklahoma and Wyoming and other places. So I'm trying to expand a little bit and get out of just that one corner of Wyoming that I started in.
But not Texas.
Not Texas, not yet. Although it's funny, I've been here just a short time, and then going to Cowboy Church and some things, I've had several people come up and say, every writer gets this. Oh, you need to write a story about me, or you need to write a story about my family, or I know somebody you need to write about. And I'm getting a lot of that out here. So there's bound to be a story here somewhere.
I had a friend do that once. He said, write a story and put me in it. So
Yes.
I wrote a story where he's the guy that's wanted dead or alive. And his wife had irritated me that day, so I made her the person he'd killed. So, never mess with a writer.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. What makes you unique as a writer?
That's a good question. I think somebody else would have to answer that question, because I try to be me and do my own thing. And I've been compared to other writers and the like, but I don't try to copy anyone or try to set, this is who I want to be or whatever. I just try to tell a good story that's interesting. And if it makes me unique, then I'm unique, and so be it. But it'd be hard to define, well, I'm unique because I don't try to be unique. I just try to do my thing. So.
Okay. I don't know. Some of your hobbies include things like knocking down the gavel on oh gosh, now the word won't come to me.
I've been a rodeo announcer.
There you go.
I've announced some barrel races. I went to rodeo announcer school. I love to garden. I love to travel, especially out west. I tend to be kind of a loner at times. So it doesn't bother me to go out there by myself and just hang out by myself. So from those standpoints, maybe I give some uniqueness to some of what I try to do. As far as my writing, I try to be very descriptive, but I've been accused of purple prose many times, so I have to be careful on that as well.
Okay. As long as by purple you don't mean scatological.
No.
Oh gosh.
I get too descriptive, too flowery, too poetic, too whatever.
I think that's a good thing. It's something that we're losing with new writers who don't really control the language and don't love the language, and they want to write like they were saving money on a telegram. Oh wait, they don't even know what a telegram is anymore.
I get comments after some of the things I've done, some short stories and things that I've done, and they say, well, it's tightly written and blah blah. Well, yes, it is, but it's like a newspaper story, who, what, when, where, why, and how. But did I learn anything? Did I feel like I was in that setting? Did I feel like I was there? No, I didn't. I could have been in any sterile, padded room anywhere. So,
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask, what's your background? Where'd you grow up? I gather that was some interesting places. And what
what?
forces shaped you?
Well, I grew up in Missouri on a farm in Missouri, but my dad was born in Montana, near Cascade, Montana. In fact, my grandfather cowboyed with Charles Marion Russell, the artist.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, I've got some documents that show that mention that. And so we would go out there when I was in high school, especially to visit relatives. And we'd pass through Montana and Wyoming and of course, Kansas, Colorado. And I just fell in love with the American West. And my mother had the complete collection of Zane Grey, and she was reading those all the time. And so, and of course, I grew up. I'm an old guy. I grew up in an era where Roy Rogers and Gene Autry and the Cisco Kid and Lone Ranger, they're all on television or in the movies all the time. And so you were bombarded with all of that all the time. Plus, if you had a kind of an interest to start with, it didn't take much to push me over the end, to push me over the ledge, if you will, the cliff, to become interested in that. And when I decided, or at least felt like I had a little bit of ability to write, it was just a natural that I follow that course. So growing up in Missouri on a farm, I was around livestock all the time. And so as I talk about livestock and cattle and whatever, it's from experience. In fact, in my first book, I talk about in the, like, I think it's the second chapter, about a calf being born. And I had a reader tell me once, she said, well, obviously you were around that because the way you described it and the way the cow hit her calf in the brush and whatever, you must have seen that somewhere along. And I have. So from that perspective, I guess I grew up around that. But first time I saw the Rockies, I was hooked. I mean, I just loved it.
I can do that to you.
Yeah.
And that sure helps that you've got that background. I try not to write about cows myself, just because I never spent that much time close to them, other than eating them.
Well, yeah. Well, I do enjoy that as well. Yes.
You know, of the books that you've written, what's your favorite?
Oh gosh. I talked to an author the other day and I asked that very question, and they said it's like asking what is your favorite kid. You know, all your kids. Which one is your favorite? Well, I like them all, but for different reasons. I think the first one, Where a Good Wind Blows, would be my favorite at this point, because I meant for it to be a standalone book. I just wanted to get a book out there. It took me 7 years to write it, and it's my baby. And but then once it was written and out there, and then the decision was made that it needed to be actually a trilogy. And so then now, what am I going to say in the second one? What am I going to say in the third one? And I have to carry those characters forward. And so that became a challenge, because I'd never written a trilogy. I'd never written a series, if you will. So how do you not overwrite in the second one, talking about something they've already know about from the first one? But how you don't want to underwrite either, because if they only read the second one, well, where did this character come from? So you have to, there's a fine line of putting too much in from the first one, but not enough in the first one. So the first one can stand alone. I live with that. It's good. I didn't have to worry about it. So I would say the first one, Where a Good Wind Blows. I spent a lot of time out there doing the research. I felt the wind on my face, the birds, the sky, the mountains, everything. I felt I put a lot of me in that book.
Yeah, that love of that part of Wyoming and of that background sure comes through in that book.
Thank you. That was my intent.
Yeah.
And I think it's there in the second one too. And I'm trying to get it there in the third one, although I'm taking the third one and moving it just about a few miles down the road, but it's still in Wyoming.
Oh, okay. You headed for Fort Laramie?
No, I'm headed, not quite, but I'm headed over in the Laramie Mountain Range a little more. Some towns that don't even exist anymore, but did at the time.
But did. Oh gosh, that's one of my pet peeves. People heading to towns that don't exist yet.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love the movie Stagecoach, but they're headed for Lordsburg,
Yes.
and Lordsburg is a railroad town that didn't exist when the stagecoach was running.
Oh no. Oh no. That's not good. That's not good.
No,
Uh,
but it's still a great movie.
Well,
Oh,
I remember one of the things that came up in one of our Western writer meetings, and was one of the tours, and they mentioned at some point they said a lot of times we write about scenes or scenery at least that exists today that didn't exist then. There's trees there today that didn't exist then because of prairie fires and whatever, and yet we write them in there like they were there and they weren't, or vice versa. So we got to be real careful in doing that. That is the setting we're describing, did it exist then? Just because it's there today doesn't mean it was that way then. And I know you in your experience have run into some streams, like you've told me about a couple out there that actually had boats and things on them, and there's barely any water in them now. So
well, actually, one of my pet peeves is all the people who tell me about the paddle wheel boats on the San Pedro, and they have seen the photographs. Well, the paddle wheel boats ran on the Colorado and never got up the Gila, and especially not the San Pedro. But they'll put that, when you read
exactly.
books about Tombstone, they'll tell you taking the oar out by paddle wheel boat. Got to watch them. Do you want to tell us a little more about what A Good Wind Blows is all about? You've talked a lot about it.
Well, it's if I could sum it up in just real tightly here, it's about a woman who grows up as an only child in that part of the country near Chugwater. Um, and her dad at one point decides that, hey, she's becoming a little bit too much of a tomboy. So she's never going to meet a guy that way and be prim and proper and whatever. So she's sent back into Nebraska, but for him that's sending her back east to live with an aunt that was lived out there. They had a store, and so she became a school teacher. And at that time, they like school teachers to be single and young and whatever. So she fit the bill perfectly. And but she gets a letter from her dad that says things aren't good. There's a guy that's come into the area that's trying to run me off my ranch or whatever, and I'm not in the best of health anymore. So if you can, I know your kids will miss you, but I need you to come home. So she decides to go home. Well, meantime, there's a guy. He gets run off his ranch and left out in the desert, out on the prairie for dead. And a foreman of a ranch that's actually quite a ways away finds him, and they nurse him back to health, and they decide to send the foreman and another guy over to Chugwater to find out just kind of what's going on. I mean, this doesn't sound right. People getting run off the ranch. So they go back. Well, they go as just cowboys. They get jobs as hands on the ranch and or in that area, and they're just undercover, if you will. Well, they kind of see what's going on, and they figure out a plan to maybe get their boss involved to get the guy's ranch back. And lo and behold, the daughter shows up. And she doesn't know that they're undercover, so she thinks they're among the bad guys. And then they're shooting, and she shoots. Jake Summers is the main guy. She ends up shooting him at one point, and tries to kill him, and just different things. And I don't want to spoil the ending of the story, but there's prairie fires, there's flash floods, there's stampedes, there's shootouts, there's bad guys, good guys, romance, you name it, it's all in there. So, and
It
then the
sounds great.
second book just picks up from there
Okay.
and goes forward. So
Going to be a hard act to follow.
it is a hard act to follow, but I think I've pulled it off.
All righty.
The third one is the really hard act to follow. And I got a whole stack of notes here, and I'm about 8 chapters into it, and I'm not sure where it's going now. So I got to figure that out. But no, it's set in that area. I love that Chugwater area because of the Chugwater Creek, the bluffs there, the buffalo. They say buffalo jumps. They refer to it, but there is no one spot, I think, that was actually the jump. There was a all series of bluffs all along that creek that could have been anywhere along there. And So I like that part. It's cattle country. The Swan Land and Cattle Company was big in that time out there, but I don't quite get into that. It's just right before they kind of move in, and that's kind of what it's about. It has some funny spots. There's one funny spot in there that I think is hilarious. Even today, nobody's ever commented that they just broke out laughing when they read it. To me, I do every time I think about it. So, but anyway.
Okay, well, I think you've just told us what your current project is. It's
Yes.
writing that third
Well, I'm
book.
writing some short stories too. I've got a short story that is due out in the fall as part of an anthology. And they wanted the same characters or some of the same characters that are in Good Wind. And they wanted it to be a mystery. And I'd never written a mystery before. So I actually wrote two. And I liked the second one better than the first one, but they chose the first one. So that's exciting. It should be out hopefully this fall. We'll see.
Okay, who's the publisher on that?
That'll be 5 Star.
Oh, great,
5 Star.
good publisher.
Yeah, it's Jim Jones and Larry Swayze and John Nesbitt and I, the four of us.
Okay,
So
great.
it's called Perilous Frontier, I think is the name of the book. So
Okay, that sounds good. Perilous Frontier. And
yes.
what's the third book? Well, after a good winds blows, what's the next title?
The next one was Where the Wildflowers Dance.
Okay.
That one's out. It came out from 5 Star. Supposed to be released last June. It didn't actually come out until December because of COVID things.
Yeah.
But it came out in December. And then the next one's Where Cold the Waters Run.
Okay. And of course, Where the Wildflowers Dance and Where a Good Wind Blows are both available on Amazon.
Right.
Along with your children's books.
Right. There's 3 children's books, Scooter the Cowdog, Mud Between My Toes, and Bandit the Cowdog is the last one, most recently.
Okay.
There's a 4th one written called Tommy the Tugboat Turtle.
Okay.
It's pretty basic for little kids, but it hasn't been published yet. But it is in the hopper here somewhere. That I had to write a children's story for a competition that didn't get held last year, and they needed a children's story that's never been published. So I knocked it out, and I really like it. It's a fun story, and but so far I haven't submitted it anywhere or anything. So I've got one written that's not published, but it's about a turtle. And he has a friends that are, tortoises and snapping turtles and all kinds of turtles you can think of are friends. So.
Okay. Oh, and the books are also available on DougHawking.com/shop. And you can find links to them at the Tucson Festival of Books through the Amigos and Ladies of the West on the, on that page.
Yeah. On that page. That's exactly right.
Okay, well, Phil, it's been good talking to you, and I'm going to take off now. You have any last thoughts for us?
No, I appreciate this opportunity. I really appreciate being part of the group that the Amigos and Ladies of the West, and it's a great group, great authors, and really appreciate all you've done for us in that regard, and taking the leadership role in that. So you're doing a great job. Thank you for taking time to talk to me today.
Well, thank you.